He's gonna take.
That way we can spread a little.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
Let's call to order the Silicon Valley Energy Executive Committee meeting of Monday, January 27th, 2025 at 10:05 a.m. First up is roll call.
Thank you. Sharkline,
Present.
Scozola,
Here.
Meadows,
Here.
Tyson,
Here.
Martinez Beltran,
Here.
Walia.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum present. All members are here.
Thank you. Next is public comment on matters not listed on the agenda. It's an opportunity for the public to speak on items that we are not discussing today. No one's in the room. Is there anyone remote wishing to speak?
No hands raised here.
Okay. We'll move on to our consent calendar. Our one consent calendar item is approve the minutes of November 22nd, 2024 Executive Committee meeting. Are there any changes, comments, questions? Is there any member of the public wishing to speak on this item? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Please call.
Sharkline,
Present. Yes.
Scozola,
Hi.
Meadows,
Yes.
Tyson,
Here.
Martinez Beltran,
Yes.
Walia.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion
You started.
carries.
It's contagious.
Okay, we'll move on to a regular calendar. Our first item is item number 2, the CEO update. Monica?
First of all, welcome to the new executive committee. Congratulations to all of you for being here, and thank you again. I know our staff really appreciates the involvement and support, and this is certainly one of the more important committees that we have, since we tend to use this committee to preview a lot of the things that we take forward, and really appreciate your feedback and input to help us deliver a better report and summary to the board when we get there. I just have a few items, but I'm really going to hand it over first to Bennett to give you kind of an update on what we're hearing, reading about what's going on in Washington, D.C. as it impacts us.
Thank you, Monica. So a lot going on in Washington, D.C. As you all might have seen, President Trump signed a flurry of executive orders on his first day, several of which that actually impact energy and climate issues. So we've been monitoring those very closely. These include orders, for example, that temporarily halt the permitting for offshore and onshore wind projects. It withdraws the United States from the Paris Climate Agreement. It directs federal agencies to take emergency actions to speed the leasing, siting, and production of domestic fossil fuel sources. It directs federal agencies to examine ways to streamline permitting, especially for fossil fuel, hydropower, biofuels, and nuclear projects. And then, as you may have read, it also terminates the clean vehicle waivers for states. So near-term impacts to Silicon Valley clean energy. One of the executive orders actually temporarily halts all disbursements of funding from the Inflation Reduction Act and the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, of which you might remember SVCE and the city of San Jose recently received were awarded a $12 million grant for charging stations in several of our members agencies. That program has been put on pause based on this executive order. So I wanted to just mention that, a lot of these orders direct the federal agencies to do reports and to come up with implementation plans. So there's more information that we will find out in the coming weeks and months about how exactly the federal agencies will interpret the language in the executive orders. Much of the language in the orders are very broad and high level, so this implementation is really going to be key. For example, on the Inflation Reduction Act, which grant programs are going to be halted, which are not going to be halted. So we will keep very close tabs on this, and we'll also keep you all updated on the impacts to SVCE. So with that, happy to answer any questions.
Go.
So, okay, sorry, yeah, I was going this way. So it's very helpful to understand the breadth of, what's been going on in just a very short time. And I think we get questions where people don't understand just what happened very quickly. So if there is some sort of talking point, and I had communicated with Monica about this last week, where we can phrase this in such a way that, because what's going on. I don't want to try to say, and especially around the grant that
we were gonna get with San Jose and, because that's really local impact. So, because I think it's important for people to understand the rapid and immediate impacts that are gonna affect us as these things are implemented.
Yeah, we have some talking points specifically related to that we'll send out after this meeting. But if there's anything else we can add, we can do that as well.
Thank you. Director Tyson?
Thanks for the update. I'm a little worried about when you say, and then they're gonna come up with new, directions and all of this, because I have an inside track. So my son, whose birthday was yesterday, is a division director at the FDA.
Oh, wow.
And he said on one day, they said FDA employees are not allowed to speak to any
Yes.
other outside the government. The next day, they said, now you're not allowed to speak to anybody outside the FDA,
Whoa.
including the labs that report to him. He can't tell them that he can't tell them.
And you told you, and you're telling us.
And unfortunately, his last name is the same as mine. So you'll look it up, but I tell you, I am terrified.
Yeah.
This was not your usual birthday call. It was,
Wow.
because in addition, there were rules on remote employees. If you're within 50 miles of any office, you have to go to that one. And then what else? It's just, they've got this secret link where you can turn somebody in if they're trying to hide that they have a DEI kind of responsibility. Change their job description after November 4th. So, all right, so you heard all this. And this isn't being recorded. Or anything. But anyways, let me just say, I'd be curious as you find out more about whether the government is able to actually implement new directions on what they're going to do
Right.
and actually function at all.
Yeah, that was a great point that you bring up, because the Inflation Reduction Act and the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Acts are actually laws that Congress passed. So really, to change and to fully bring those programs, get rid of them, you have to pass another law, because otherwise you have to
Right.
implement the laws, right? But I think there's an element of unknown right now. And there's certainly things the administration can do, like the executive orders, that halts or slows down the implementation of some of these pieces of legislation. But yes.
But external communication is something I'd be curious to find out if it's widespread throughout the government or because
Does
that
help,
is crippling.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I have not heard that so far in
Yeah,
DOE. Or you can.
Thank you.
Director Martinez Beltran?
Well, I don't know how much I want to ask you, but here, I guess what I'm wondering are there what are some of the things that you're thinking down the road, changes that we don't know and may see, that I guess are some that we're most concerned about?
Yes, great question as well. So obviously in the Inflation Reduction Act, there were many things that were part of that law that we really were excited about and we think help forward our mission. So for example, the investment tax credits and production tax credits that our renewable developers use are very helpful for those projects. There were a number of residential tax credits, including 25C, which is a residential heat pump tax credit, $2,000 a year for a heat pump water heater or a heat pump furnace. That is also really helpful for customers. There's a variety of electric vehicle rebates as well. So those are the things that we are watching very closely. Not related to the Inflation Reduction Act, you've heard President Trump talk a lot about raising tariffs. That has a direct and material impact on our renewable projects as well. There was an executive order on tariffs, but it was not as harsh or specific than what people were anticipating. It was a federal agencies look at our trade deficit, come up with some recommendations versus a tariff right out the gate. So just provide you some information about how the president has moved so far.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for all the work you're doing.
I'll just add, we actually saw an uptick in phone calls in from customers asking about what are the implications for the, particularly the heat pump tax credits, like the electrification tax credits. So people are tracking and are wondering what the implications are of the executive orders. And we told them we're monitoring, and as we get more information, we'll update our guidance on that as well.
a lot of uncertainty right now.
Director Wally?
Thank you, Chair Klein. So I was going to say I agree with everything except no, I don't have a son at FDA. But that's essentially what I was going to ask. It would be helpful if we can have some kind of written talking points. And I'm looking at two categories. What are our concerns down the road? And what is happening right now? Because we're all watching that same space and there's a lot more depth of information that you will have. And if something is in the gray zone, perhaps it would be great, Monica, when you include that in your one-on-ones with the directors before the board meetings, because some information may not be that clear that you're ready to send an email to us. Like it's not that black and white is what I'm saying, but clear enough to you, the messaging. So just some of those thoughts. I agree with everything that has been said. It's a matter of deep concern to SVCE, to our residents and to the cities as well, because that was exactly my sinking feeling with the 12 million grant that you said. The prior council meeting, I very proudly shared, hey, finally we had the money for those 5 bus charges in our village that we had to remove because ARPA funds. And now here it's like, seriously, it's gone. And I picked it up on through the EO, and I can't keep track of all of that stuff the way Benna can. So support and guidance from you would be helpful.
Director Martinez-Bertrand?
Along those lines too, I'm wondering if you have shared with the cities. Yeah, I shared with mine because I also announced it, so I shared with them as soon as I got notice from you. I didn't. You did, okay.
Staff directly, yeah.
Okay, great.
Director Scasola?
So I'm just wondering, as time goes by, it seems that the contracts that we have in place, that every once in a while we have somebody's like, oh, we need to renegotiate this. So my question is, with these impending tariffs, if they go through, is this gonna, are we gonna get a flood of requests for renegotiated contracts?
Yeah, so a lot of the developers have been on this since day one, since before November, right? They had their scenarios kind of laid out, and if this happens, and this is gonna happen, if this happens, this is happening. But the contracts that we had that were conditioned on tariffs, or that they had some exposure to tariffs because the developer hadn't acquired the equipment yet. So once you acquire the equipment and you have it in US soil, you're no longer subject to any kind of tariff uncertainty. So for those developers, I think that's the majority of developers were okay. We had one developer who was still in the process of procuring equipment. And so we had to rush to make some changes to that agreement. We've been informed as of last week that they have acquired all the equipment, and so they're not going to be subject to, and we had an opener in the contract that will allow for a change in price if they were subject to a higher tariff. So developers are really smart. Same with PTC and ITC. The PTC and ITCs for the IRS rules, they just have these safe harbor procurement requirements. They have to purchase a certain amount of their equipment by a certain date. They've all pretty much met that requirement. Now, we'll see this is in future RFPs. So as we go out, because we're continuously buying resources to try to fill our needs, all the way till infinity, I guess. We think we'll be here forever. And so they'll be embedded in future procurement efforts. But there's a lot of dynamics that go into that, into market conditions, not just what's happening in terms of ITC, PTC, and tariffs on the national level, but more importantly, what's happening here in California. So as you have these big procurement mandates that force us to go out and buy, that drives prices and demand, et cetera. So there's the macro, we call them the macro ones, which are global, but they're more driven by kind of micro, which are state and local areas. And when we talk a little bit about battery safety in a little bit, I think that's gonna have a big drive on battery prices, quite frankly, as you start to kind of figure out, what are we doing here, and we know what we're doing here in terms of battery safety. So a lot of things go into pricing.
And I just had a few quick comments. So thanks for the update. I sent you something that came from the US Conference of Mayors. They went through a deep dive of executive order analysis. So I forwarded that to both of you, pass it to staff however you want. My Sunnyvale staff found it very, very useful. The one good thing I picked out of there was the concept of focusing on nuclear. So trying to take, and I think that's going to be one of the big things that we should look at over the next 3.5 years. What what we can focus on are the conceivably positive things where the administration might actually be rowing in the same direction that we want to. So whether or not, and I understand things will be changing fairly rapidly, but if there's certain things that we can carve out and focus on, maybe we can find partnerships, and more importantly, funding at the local level. I talked to Licardo and Kana the Friday before inauguration, before all these, and both of them were basically, questioning, having no idea pretty much where we are now a week later, what direction this would be going into. But yeah, they were sorry to see that funding has been paused. Both of them were very much for it, of course, but let's see what we can do and find out those programs that are still getting funding is a critical thing. So thank you.
Okay, so battery safety update. I've got Chris on the line, should you have any specific questions, but this came up last week. If staff could provide a little bit more information about the fires that happened at the Vistra facility in Moss Landing. And of course, we don't have much insights other than what we all read in the paper, just to be clear. So we're not experts in this area. We're not there. We don't know exactly. And I think there's still some investigations that are happening to find out what was the cause of the fire. But from what we've read so far, that facility is a part of a 750 megawatt energy storage facility. So there's several different battery projects within that facility. And the one that caught fire, I guess a couple of weeks ago now or last week, is a 300 megawatt facility that is a lithium ion battery. That site itself, as I believe, this would be the fourth fire at that site. Wow. Not at that particular project, but at that site. And so the owner of the battery, or Vistra, the company, believes that it was essentially the batteries overheated. And when they overheat and they're enclosed in a building structure, it caused the whole structure to essentially collapse and add to the fire. And so the battery chemistry, and I'm looking at George because he'll probably correct me here, is it's a lithium ion chemistry. And according to Chris, it is a lithium nickel magnesium cobalt oxide battery, which we only have two of those types of projects in our portfolio, the Aratina and the Baldy Mesa. But when Vistra was built, it was built before a whole lot of fire safety, battery fire safety kind of protocols got put in place, because it's an early project. It's one of the first battery projects in California. Since then, there has been lots of improvements in how these batteries are housed. And so they're now housed in single containers. And so they don't have, when you put 300 megawatts in one facility in one big room and you have a fire, then the whole thing catches fire. Now we have them separated by containers, so 30 megawatts wouldn't be in one enclosure. So there has been some improvements to it. Obviously, the state cares about this a lot. And so the state has, the California Public Utility Commission has a data request out to all load serving entities, including SVCE. And we're complying with that. We're sending them all the information about all of our projects, both online and in development. They're obviously working with the developers as well. And they mostly want to know, like, what is the technology? What's the chemical makeup? How were they installed? What safety protocols do they have in place? But the reason the state cares about this so much is because we can't get to our 2045 goals without storage. We all know that, right? And so since 2020, California, through the CalISO system, has had about 500 megawatts of online storage capacity online. We now have 11,200 megawatts of storage. So that was in 4 years that all of this kind of got built. So that's quite a bit of capacity. But to get to our SB 100 goals, we're really looking at 50,000 megawatts of storage. So that's a lot more than what we have online now, right? And that all has to get done like within the next 5 to 10 years. And so that's a lot of capacity to bring online just from a transmission standpoint, for sure. And we all seen those challenges. But now as we start to think about how they're going to site them, where they're going to site them, and Brenna will talk a little bit about a pending or a possible legislation or bill that might see its way through the legislature this year. The state kind of took away some of that control on siting and putting safety measures in place from the local jurisdictions and put it back at the state level through a bill that passed, I think, 2 years ago, right? And so there's some talk about reversing that. But batteries are going to be part of our clean goals. So we have to figure out as buyers, as clean energy advocates, as load, how do we help ensure that they're safe too? We don't take on, so long as we don't own them, we don't have the liability, right? The contracts are very clear about who's liable for these, but we have to be part of the solution, right? We cannot just pretend like that's not our problem. It is part of our problem too, because we need these to meet our clean goals. So maybe, Ben, you can talk a little bit about the legislation.
Sure. So Assemblymember Don Addis, which represents that region, Moss Landing area, introduced a bill AB 303 last week to basically do what Monica said, to disallow the state from approving these projects and putting that approval and permitting back onto local governments. And then the bill also has a setback requirement of 3,200 feet from any sensitive uses. That includes schools, parks, community centers, housing, and you can't site them on environmentally sensitive lands, and coastal wetlands, etc. So that bill has been introduced. It's going to go through the policy committee process, and I think there's going to be a robust conversation, like Monica said.
And that's for utility scale.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, so
Utility
not
scale.
for the stuff that you put in your
No,
garage
that's right.
or at your facilities.
Yes. AB 303. By Assemblymember Don Addis.
It's a huge setback,
It is really large.
3,200 feet.
But if you talk about the contaminant,
Yeah, okay, so
If
it's
you
how
talk-
far the plume might go. I
yes,
guess.
that's the
Part of
bigger
it,
question.
yeah.
It's not the direct, well, fire is so my last company was a battery charging software company. And we were testing single cells. To see a single cell blow up is pretty impressive. And then you look at cars, you look at wall storage, and you look at big facilities, it becomes a very big issue from that standpoint. So, 3,000 feet, not a lot. It's good for fire and immediate explosion. But chemicals, you saw Mount Moss Landing is basically 3 days. I can't remember how many days that people were, it's the chemicals and all that at the end of the day, it's a big issue.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is a big issue for us, obviously, one that we're monitoring and one that we really want to work with the local jurisdictions as much as possible. We'll be visiting a site in the Central Valley in April for ribbon cutting of a new battery storage that we added to a peaker. Again, we're proud of these facilities. We need these facilities to meet our clean goals. But we also understand the local concerns that happen in these communities where these projects, because they're not getting built in Silicon Valley, by the way.
Yeah.
They're getting built in other areas, and so we have to be very, they are hosting our clean goals in a sense. Okay, and then the last thing, just from the CEO report, just a few announcements on some of the joint agencies that we work in partnership with. So SVCE, which is the group that we do all of our legislative and regulatory advocacy through. They have selected a new chair, Rob Shaw from Central Coast Community Energy. And I also want to announce that I am now on the executive committee there. It wasn't a very like competitive process. But anyway, and then just to let you know also that SVCE's annual conference will be April 28th and 30th in Irvine. Andrea sent out the information. If you are interested in attending, please let us know as soon as possible because the hotel rooms are booking up. They have limited space for all of these for people. And then CC Power, which is California Community Power, this is the joint agency that we do joint procurement through. They also have selected a new chair, Lori Mitchell from San Jose Clean Energy, and I have been appointed to the ad hoc budget committee for that one. And so no updates from California Community Choice Financing Authority. And that concludes my CEO report.
Any other questions or comments from directors? Any member of the public wishing to speak on this item? No? Okay. We'll move on to item 3, elect chair and vice chair of the 2025 SVCE Executive Committee. Over to you.
Thank you. Since this is the first time that we're meeting, we're going to go ahead and select our chair and vice chair of this group for the year. Again, this is for a 1-year term. Anybody from this group can serve in either of these roles and there are no term limits. So we will do this in a process very similar to what we did at the board level. So if there are more than one person interested in either of these roles, we'll do a roll call vote by name. And if there are more than two, then the top two will move on and then hopefully we'll find a selection at that point. After somebody's been identified, we will ask for a vote to ratify the selection. At that point, Chair Klein will then pass the gavel on to the new chair and we will address the vice chair in the same fashion.
Okay. Are there any questions about the process? Is there any member of the public wishing to speak on this? Let's get that out of the way now.
No hands raised.
Okay. Is there any interest in chair?
I'm interested.
Thank you. Is there any other?
So I was gonna, I mean, the way this would logically work is the vice chair of the board would be the chair of this, but you've been the chair of this, but there's no term limit, so I take the possibility in my mind if you wanted to be chair, but.
I appreciate that. I'm happy to pass on the chair. So
Okay, well
thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for that. Director Martinez Beltran, would you like to speak?
Sure. I would love the opportunity to be the chair for the executive committee. I think you're all aware now that I'm interested in being leadership on the board itself. These past 2 years I've run for vice chair and I think this would be a great, I heard some of my colleagues mention that they thought this would be a great way to prepare and I would like to do that so that I could prepare for leadership. I also think that it would be a great opportunity to, open up and maybe kind of get back on track where we get people who also get to come on and hold those roles. And we want to continue to build the pipeline as none of us plan or will be here forever. And so I think it's just a good opportunity for us to continue to build leadership.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So you said a vote later to ratify. Do we don't need a vote at this point?
Correct. We'll make a motion for Director Martinez Beltran since she's the only.
Fantastic. Thank you. So congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And you can continue running the meeting.
Would somebody like to make an official motion and then we can?
Do you want to wait to the end? Oh,
So moved.
oh. Second.
Is that a second?
Sure. Okay, thank you. And since we're all in the room, we can just do a call the question.
Yes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Those abstained? Unanimous. Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Chair.
I also wanted to add, because I heard
Is
this
it?
concern as well, if I could, that I will absolutely be here in person. I know that was important to, so I wanted to assure you that commitment as well. I think for members, however, if they, are looking and need remote access, I hope that we'll give them that grace as we do to our employees as well. So, okay, great. So I think I'm handing this back to you, right, for vice chair?
Sure, we can do that. Is there anyone interested in the vice chair role?
No one's interested.
I could be convinced.
By way of a motion.
Yeah, well, I just need the assurance from the chair that and you already gave the assurance that you're planning on being here
That's correct.
and all that stuff, so it would be, you would, I don't want to end up acting as chair if you can't make it
Yes.
regularly, so,
Right.
but with your assurance that you will make it.
Yes. Yes, I'll
And
be here in
lead,
person,
then
and I know
I
sometimes
can
you're
be vice chair, yeah. Sorry, that's a little awkward, but you know what I mean.
not. I mean, if you feel that you don't want to do it, I don't think we want to make you do it, but I absolutely think you would be a great.
All right, Jamie.
You have a motion from me.
Yes.
Let's move on.
Yes, right.
Very good.
Okay, so that was a motion from Director Walia, and who was the second? I'm sorry.
Second.
Chair, if you'd like to call the question.
Okay, can we call the question? Aye.
All in favor?
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Mentions, that passes unanimously.
All
All
right,
right, congratulations. We're gonna end here.
gotta love those uncontentious.
Okay, so
Chock
now.
full of enthusiasm.
Right.
Did you take public comment on that?
I did it, I did at the beginning.
We took it for.
But we didn't take it on vice chair, did we need to do?
No, I think that was all encompassing.
Okay.
Cool.
Before we go on to the next item, just as a reminder, Andrea sent out another reminder email. We still need volunteers, mostly for the
Audit.
audit committee. And it can be someone from your staff, in fact. It doesn't have to be a board member or an alternate. But we need to find at least 2 more, 3 more?
3 more to be.
3 more.
Okay.
Is searching.
He is, we'll check.
Okay.
Can you remind Sheila? She's been pretty busy and as the alternate, I don't know if she has put her name in.
We have heard from Sheila for her interest.
Okay, good, yeah. Because we were talking the other day and she had like a lot of email, but she's not the main, so.
Just as if you're on the finance committee, which we haven't decided yet, you can't be on the audit committee, so it has to be a different staff, a different board member. That's why we're encouraging maybe some of your staff for the audit committee.
Are you full on the request for finance committee? Or do you need?
Getting there. We have a good group so far.
We have lots for the legislative committee.
I heard that.
Okay.
Chair, would this be appropriate time for me to express thanks for Director Klein for his services?
Absolutely.
I really felt like this is the appropriate time. I really
Yeah, it
appreciate
is.
his firm, strong leadership and his presence and, you know, as speaking as your new chair, and I thank you for your support on that. This is such an important committee. And the more I look at the things that we kind of volunteer to serve on outside boards, this is the most business-like one. And it has to be. We're facing these regulatory issues, there's a lot of dollars involved. You know, the future of a lot of things is in our hands. And so this is, I think we're all here for the right reasons. This is important work. And so I just want to say that the executive committee is a really key part of that as well. As a vehicle to provide a lens to the staff on what the rest of the board might do and to bounce ideas. So I know it's always been a very participative group, and it's great to have new members come in and new people in roles so that we have continuity. Because one of the things I'm concerned about as I step into this chair role again, and the reason I did it again was because my concern about continuity during change with such a large, important business, with even since November 4th, a lot of outside forces that are assailing us. So it's going to take more, and we can't control what our city councils do in terms of naming us. But what we
No, we
can do
cannot.
is we can control what we do once we're here, and that is to learn the business and to come prepared. And I know that we do that. It's just encourage you. This is the most important, in my eyes, way to really participate in helping this larger community. So I'm just glad to have you all here, and I think you've gotten my sense of how important this is to me.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
And thanks again to Larry.
Thank you.
Keeping us on
All right, so we'll move to number 4, to select a regular meeting schedule for 2025 executive committee meetings. And I will just suggest that for that, I will let you know I will not be able to do it on the 25th of April because we have our Cal Cities will be up in Sacramento. So I just want to highlight that. I don't know who else will be there.
We have
I'm
State of
guessing
the
other-
Cities that day,
So we might want to hold, or that is my
but
point.
it'll be a little later.
Yeah.
But
You have it together?
we do, Los Altos Hill.
Yeah, you get something, okay.
So it's a lunch meeting.
Okay. So we'll do a polling for that. You know, that works. Okay, moving to number 5, or were there any I'm sorry. were there any
No worries.
questions?
So for item 4, we are hoping to have a regular meeting schedule similar to what we did for this past year, which would be the 4th Fridays of the month at 10 a.m.
Mhm.
Some exceptions would be February. Staff has a conflict, so we bump it up to the 3rd February at 10 a.m. And no meeting in July. We'll have a summer recess to follow our board schedule. And then in November, December, we would also poll for a meeting at that time, given holiday schedules.
Okay. Does it mean we can take off April 25th? Is that what you're including right now?
Yeah, if that is your desire, we can pull for the 20th.
I'm not saying that. I just want to make sure by the time you poll from all of us. So I can open that up. Okay, thanks.
Which is, you said the 21st you moved it to. I also, and I saw that, but I also have a board meeting in Long Beach that day.
The 21st.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If most people can make the 25th, I'll just have Palmer
On the 28th.
on the 28th.
Is there any other conflicts for the 21st?
Yeah, I'm supposed to go, I'm going up to Sacramento on the 21st. Was planning on leaving earlier than noon, which is when this meeting ends, so.
Is the 28th generally work for everyone in February?
28th works for me.
Okay.
Are we going back to the 28th?
Yeah.
It sounds like yes, we'll stick with February 28th for our February meeting. We would poll for April and poll for the holiday.
Okay.
And it might, as much as you're proposing to poll for the holiday, can we just put in, I'd say right now, it's as opposed to wait till that time, put something on the calendar now for the first Friday in December, so December 5th. And I would just kind of do that cross thing since of course, you know, Thanksgiving and the holidays rapidly get busy. I think it's a little bit easier if we just, and if we move it, if people have issues, we can move it, cancel it later.
Great, December 5th, 10 a.m.
And you'll send out meeting folders. I very much rely on those. Thank you.
I was gonna ask you, did you put December in there yet, or was it just because
No.
we did it? I
We were just gonna
haven't
pull it, so we'll do December 5th kind of as a hold.
Yeah.
So really the only question mark is April.
looked at it. Yes.
Thanks, Andrea.
Okay, thank you.
And that is a formal item to vote on, so I don't know if we want to open public comment and then go for a vote.
Okay. Let's go comment.
No comments.
All right. So then, can we just take roll?
If somebody would like to make a
I'll
motion
make-
to,
I'll make a motion to move the February meeting to the 28th. Poll on the April 25th meeting and have a tentative meeting on December 5th.
and also cancel July. Everybody's okay with cancellation?
Yes, as I was in staff report, yes.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, second by Member Malia. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, very good. So now we'll move to item number 5. Recommend the SVCE Board of Directors approve an updated cash out policy for rooftop solar customers. And I pass that to you.
Well, thank you so much. For those who don't know me, I'm Peyton Parks. I'm on the Energy Services team here at SVCE, which now falls under the larger customer success team that Justin is leading. And we're going to talk about a population of our customers, specifically solar customers today, and what success might mean for them as well as for the agency. So next slide, Andrea. Top line, topic sentence, what we'd like to propose today is that we establish a new net surplus cash out policy at SVCE to begin in January 2026, so about a year from now. Currently, SVCE is paying 2 times the PG&E net surplus compensation rate. We'll get into what that is. And what we'd like to propose is that we move that to 1x, so essentially mirroring what it is that PG&E will pay customers for excess solar generation. So this chart will help us kind of whittle down and really understand who it is that we're talking about in this solar population. So starting on the left here, we understand that solar customers are constantly in sort of a push and pull with their energy. So they produce solar during daylight hours, they consume power during the times that the sun is not in the sky. And ideally, that push and pull would come to a balance. So the goal would really be for your solar generation to equal what your consumption of power is. but there's about 25% of our solar customers who generate more kilowatt hours on an annual basis than what they're consuming. Based on the 40,000 folks that we have with solar on their rooftops, that's about 10,000 people who are pushing more back to the grid than they're actually consuming. Now, when we're talking about NSC, we're talking about these annual kilowatt hours and then multiplying those kilowatt hours by a predetermined rate. So currently we're doing 2x PG&E. That calculation is done, and then in April, when we close the books on the solar year, which runs from May to April at SVCE, we pay those customers for their excess power. Now, if your credit at that time, based on that calculation, is over $100, you get a check in the mail, which is very nice for our customers. If it's under $100, you get a credit directly to your bill statement. Any questions up to this
I
point?
do have one question, and that is, when you say the rate, do you mean the generation rate or the total rate?
Very fair. So the rate that we're talking about here is net surplus compensation, which is a special rate. So for solar folks, they net meter during the course of a month mostly at retail rates. But by the end of the year, when they have this surplus, we don't pay them at a retail rate. We pay them 2 times the 12-month rolling average of what PG&E valued the grid power during daylight hours. And
So it's
And
an
you
avoided
can-
cost of
it
generation.
is the avoided cost, and you can see why all that verbiage didn't make it to a slide.
So it's already a lower rate.
So it's a lower
That's what
rate.
I'm gathering.
And we
Okay.
and we
This
have
is
a
different than our net metering rate.
Yeah, that's
It
right.
is.
Yes,
Where
with the net
there's
metering, I see
two
that.
things happening here.
there is.
All right. I can see why you explained it that way. Okay.
Yes.
I was just curious, obviously I understand the financials and always remaining competitive with PG&E, but we do offer our customers a discount. We always have, whether it be a very small increment. So I'm wondering, matching them, what's the way I want to phrase this? If we, even just by a fractional percentage point, like we're better than PG&E, like we give back more, what benefits would there be in that?
I think that there's still a fair amount of benefits in it for solar customers under SVCE. The first one would be that when their solar is not producing and they must draw power from the grid, they're receiving that discount. The other would be that if they opt to purchase our Green Prime 100% renewable product, that surcharge of 1.7 cents is returned to them in full for the times that they export. And we also do a monthly account settlement as opposed to a once annual true up. So if customers are generating less power than they use, they're able to pay that portion monthly rather than have a large true up add up to the end of the year.
And has it been thought about the PR point of view, just, like, even if it's just a fraction, like I was saying, instead of being matching PG&E, we give you a bigger check, if you will.
Sure.
In the end, like, has that been discussed at all?
Well, I think it's very much part of the conversation today and why we wanted to bring it to the group. But as we'll see in some of the following slides, in fact, if we could jump ahead one, Andrea. This request is really piggybacking on some of the statewide movement to bring solar export credits more in alignment with the value of wholesale power. So we're all familiar with the chart on the right, the infamous duck curve.
Yes.
And within the last year or two, there'd been a lot of discussion about NEM3, the big bad NEM3 coming down the pike. And the purpose there statewide was really to bring the value of the solar exports in alignment with what that power was really worth on the grid. As opposed to in the past, customers grandfathered under NEM1, NEM2 had really seen some very rich incentives. And so those incentives it's been determined that they do outweigh the benefit to the electrical system. And so when we're talking about bringing things in alignment, going back to what Director Tyson said, there's really 2 things at play. There's the push and pull hourly in how that energy is exchanged. And this is something different where at the end of the year, we're wondering, is it the correct signal to say, if you overproduce power, if you're contributing to this belly of the duck curve, do we want to vote in the way that encourages that by really giving an excess payment to those customers?
Thank you.
Sure.
That really answers my question, of course.
So the final bullet there, ultimately SVCE adopted NEM3. We saw it as the prudent path forward to bringing these things more closely in alignment, but we never changed this second aspect, which is the net surplus compensation. And this wouldn't be the first time that we've changed these cash outs for customers. And to your point, Director Scazola, the competitive advantage was very important to us from a PR standpoint early on. So from 2018 to 2022, our cash outs were happening at a full retail rate for these kilowatt hours, which was far and away, there's 4 greater signs there, more valuable than PG&E's NSC.
Yes.
Now, as we watched rooftop solar grow over that time, we started with 17,000 customers. We now have 40,000.
Wow.
So that became a very rich incentive and also fairly expensive for SVCE to try to maintain.
That makes sense.
So for the years of 2023, 24, and now moving into 25 as we approach April, we're under the current policy of double the NSC rate, which is still a rich incentive. You see 2 greater than signs on the chart there. But that was the competitive advantage that we were focusing on. Moving into 2026, we'd like to go the way of implementing NEM3, getting things in alignment. And so you can see that SVCE's cash out is proposed to be equivalent to PG&E's NSC rate. Yes, Director Willia.
Yes, please, Director.
So one of the key questions as we have seen this progress and evolve the last few years from NEM 1, 2 to 3, a lot of residents complain that it's not that beneficial. So how much of a drop are we expecting? Essentially, people getting disincentivized, comparatively speaking, why should I put solar rooftop? And is that signal, to what extent is it beneficial to us?
Sure. I think that we're sort of at the crux now where we're seeing that NEM 3 wasn't maybe as impactful in the marketplace as we thought it was going to be. In fact, an article just came out this morning from Severin Borstein at Berkeley. And it details sort of the rise and fall, sort of the consumer panic around NEM 3. And so leading up to the implementation, there was a 10x multiplication in how many of these net metering agreements were coming through, trying to beat the clock that they grandfathered in.
Yes.
And then a sharp drop afterwards. And according to the article, we've now reached levels where we're at parity with where we were in 2020 in terms of installs going on. We also understand about NEM 3 that there are greater incentives now to install a battery. I think with wildfires and resiliency top of mind, it's really pushing people in those directions. And so NEM 3 paired with the battery tends to still be really beneficial to customers. And I think that the marketplace is starting to understand that.
Yeah, and just maybe you can talk to this, but we are planning to bring something to the board with respect to batteries and incentivizing batteries.
Yeah, we have a solicitation out right now for a kind of overarching, very broad demand flexibility project program that we're going to be rolling out. And so once we get that in place, as part of that, we're assessing, what is the value of all of the different distributed energy resources or DERs that are out there, water heaters, EVs, HVAC, load shifting, and batteries. And so as kind of part of that umbrella, I think we will be assessing, additional incentives that we might want to put out so that we get batteries that are not just out there, but are actually enrolled in some sort of SVCE related program so that we are getting, all of the benefit we can from those. This is sort of influencing every system that exists, and so it's a little bit broader, or the benefits are a little bit more nebulous. So I think tying that there. So you'll be seeing that as we roll out that contract and develop that into a full program.
Okay, thank you. And there would be some adjustment also as with NEM 3. A lot of people, as you mentioned, they made sure I have a lot of residents, including my next door neighbor or across the street.
I'm sure.
Very proudly shared with me. Yes, so I have been aware of this happening and I haven't caught up with the article. I saw that coming this morning at halftime, so thank you for reminding me.
Did it get sent to us?
No, unless you're on we can add you to the Berkeley blog if you'd like to be.
The Berkeley blog.
Or what is it, the Haas Institute blog? It's separate blog.
Or just a link to this particular paper with.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
We'll add you to it.
Anyone else?
So just to clarify, the battery you're referring to in this incentive program, because I hear in front of the meter and behind the meter, you're saying, in effect, batteries that participate as part of the grid controlled flow, or are you not saying that? Because people will put in a battery because they want to have an emergency. Power goes out, that's one thing. But what we're talking about, I think, is more time of day and somebody's controlling the flow.
Yeah, I'm talking about behind the meter. So this is, we're going off a little bit on a different path than what this presentation is about, but what I was referring to, yes, would be a behind the meter customer storage program or incentive where we would be similar to what we had with this contract with Sunrun, where customers got batteries, they got the ability to island, they had a certain amount of backup power guaranteed, and there was control over the dispatch that was happening during certain times of the day that was beneficial to SVCE.
Okay, I like that, thanks.
Okay.
Right, there's a trade-off, and that's.
Did you advance one? So to summarize where we are to this point, we're currently paying a 2x NSC to about 25% of our solar customers, which in 2024, we estimate to be about 1.7, or excuse, it was 1.7 million last year. Now we're asking for a change, understanding that NEM 1 and 2 customers in particular are already seeing, the significant incentives from having solar on their rooftops to begin with. And that through our analysis of the SEVI quartiles, we understand that most solar customers are typically higher income. And so the goal here is really just to better align the SVCE side of those incentives with what the grid value is looking like. And so on the next slide, we've drawn up an example of what this does by the numbers. And so in 2024 of that 1.7 million, the average cash out was roughly $175. Under this new policy, that average cash out would be just under $100. So it's a reduction of about 45% in what SVCE is paying, while still ensuring that customers are getting their money's worth. In other words, that what they've provided back to SVCE via the grid, via their exports, is being valued at what it ought to be valued for. And I believe that's my last, oh no. We're gonna sum it all up for you. So we'd like to recommend that the exec committee supports our recommendation to adopt this new net surplus compensation multiplier of 1x. In other words, equal to PG&E's net surplus compensation rate, and that would begin for customers in January of 2026.
Okay.
Just to continue on staff's
Yes.
comments here, this is also part of our overall objective to deal with the affordability issue as well. Right? That is why the state took on only reducing the benefits, some says subsidies because it is subsidy, but the benefits that NEM customers get. So for us, this is also part of that big affordability question too, and making sure that we align the payments with the value that they're bringing to us, but also not having one set of customers benefit over at the expense of other set of customers.
Okay, I can see that.
Sorry, go ahead.
No,
Okay.
that was everything. So glad to take any additional questions.
All right, question.
Yes, so the 1.7 million, how has that varied over the last 6 years, 7 years, so 18? So what, and I understand it depends upon what the rate is and how many customers there are. How much incentives have we seen as we go through NEM1, NEM2, NEM3, as well as kind of, how much from this organization standpoint have we committed to that payback?
Sure. So in addition to it varying with the rate of NSC, it also varies based on the policy we had at the time. Andrea, if you were to go back to slide 5, if we count them back for the years that I have on the tip of my mind.
Okay.
It was 1.7 last year. It was 2.2 the prior year. That was kind of an anomaly because even though we were NSC based and 2 times NSC, the market was doing some very interesting things based on the prices for natural gas. So where we typically see an NSC from PG&E between 3 and 5 cents, it came in at almost 9 cents. So that then led to us cashing out folks at about 17 cents was the rate.
Okay.
Prior to that, it was 1.4 or 5, and I can double check that number. That was the first year we did double NSC. Before that, it was full retail rate. So we could go to our rate sheets and see that the off-peak, peak, and part peak values were exactly what people were getting cashed out for. So that would be somewhere, as you average those numbers, between about 8 and 17 cents.
So yeah, so just, it would be useful, at least for me, and it doesn't directly affect this, but to see over the history of the organization, how, for one thing, the number of customers that we're paying, but on a yearly basis, how much of our budget was attributed. And I understand there's the rate that we're going to be paying out at. There's the number, there's the general number of customers and what that is. And then we're kind of adjusting our rate as well as PG&E's adjusting their rate. So a lot of different moving parts, but just to see from a budgetary kind of track how it's changed. And especially as we've attracted new customers or understanding that this ultimately is fair for us. Did it help attract new customers because of this and what that attraction rate really was?
Sure. We can definitely capture some of that so that it's included in the final presentation and staff report.
That'd be useful. Thank you.
Maybe with that too, Peyton, is you can also add in if there are any customers who have opted out of our NEM rate and gone to PG&E's. Now, so remember.
This is, but just to be very clear, because it was in your question too, this is not NEM. What we're talking about.
Right, no, we
changing here,
understand
just
that, we understand that, yeah.
This
but
will not
just-
affect someone's net meter.
No.
rate,
But
it's
I
just the
think,
cash.
I think the point is that if a customer stays with us on our NEM rate, they get the benefit of currently, they get the benefit of 2 times NSC. I think you didn't ask the question, but I think what I'm understanding is our more lucrative offering attract customers to us? And I don't think the answer is yes, by the way.
Okay.
But I think there already are customers. It's whether or not if we went back to PG&E's and SCE rate, do we think they're gonna go back to PG&E as PG&E NEM customers? Probably not either, right? Because we're now equal, we're on par with PG&E.
Especially when and thank you for that, but especially when you talk about most of these are, let's say, more affluent customers. $100 either way isn't making a big difference in the grand scheme of things. So it was conceivably they were part of SVCE, added solar, either trying to get a specific NEM rate or whatever, and just kind of stayed with that. And this is just a bonus to them. So I appreciate that. It was just whether or not that attracted. And have we lost any customers? I don't think so, but I do know that in the olden days, there were people that had specific rates, solar customers that had specific rates with PG&E that were like, I don't want to transfer to SVCE. So. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, it sounds like a reasonable proposal. And I'm thinking back to 2017, when I put my solar in, I thought, I don't trust that full retail thing. Okay, so I'm gonna design it so I 85% of my usage, and I've come close until I got a heat pump, and now it's lower than that. That's fine, it's okay. So there's a special slice of these people who are producing a lot more electricity than they're using. And I appreciate the nature of the several things, the fact that it's more affluent people. Also, it's not really a big number to them. It's also not really a big number to us. Your proposal would change our payout from 1.7 million to probably a little less than $1 million. And all. But there's a little psychology thing. It's probably Tina's neighbor and other people who say, hey, these are the rules. I put this in and now you're messing with me. I already put the money in. I'm thinking about that psychology. And the second psychology is something we rarely talk about here. And that is, what are we doing to just save energy? I'm talking about consumption. How many rooms do you walk into and say, why are the air conditioning so much? Why are all the lights on? And will some of these people say, oh, you're gonna cut this, so hey, I'm gonna let it rip, I'm gonna heat my house more because of that. So I'm gonna, people do act that way. And so I'm actually thinking, I would be happy to leave a bit of an incentive in there, like 25% over that PG rate. And it would still say, we feel you. Things have changed, but we're still giving you a bit more than PG&E, kind of like we do the other way. And it wouldn't have that much effect on anybody.
I agree. It's, that was the reason I pointed that out, that I've known all along.
We all know people like that.
Yep.
All right, it sounds like I got 3 people that are going that direction. Yeah, like just a little bit, even if it's a fraction of a percent, like 25% I'm hearing here. Like what is the number that we can possibly do to just give them that feeling? 2 times is what we were giving, so, dramatically reducing it, I can see that for all the reasons, but leaving that little bit of, hey, we're better than PG&E still.
So quick reaction. I don't disagree at all that the psychological component certainly helps. We also know about these customers that they tend to have higher rates of adoptions of the things that we care about. So a lot of them are the ones who are participating with their programs, putting in heat pumps, et cetera. So we certainly don't want to alienate them, but I think that this proposal was drawn up with an equity lens in mind that says, we don't really want to treat a customer who ultimately pays the organization less. We receive less revenue from solar customers than we do from someone who draws power from the grid exclusively, with too many additional incentives above and beyond what they're already getting from the panels on their roofs. And I think that we'd be happy to consider another point of view, but that's where we were when we were sort of focusing in on this proposal.
And from an equity standpoint, is there a possibility that maybe we could get very specific with, the new funds that we would be gaining from reducing this, going from 2 times down to whatever we decide ultimately? Can we be real specific in where that funding goes to? Maybe some more programs or things that would help, lower income community. I think that might be a beautiful compromise potentially.
Yeah, I think the default is it just goes back to the bottom line and then that helps us determine what we can offer as.
It goes into the big pool and
Yeah,
ultimately,
exactly.
okay, so, got it.
Lower expense for this particular group of customers.
I was just thinking of equity that, in mind, with that in mind, I'm just seeing because we are ultimately, if we go this direction, we will be gaining a little bit of more money. And so with equity in mind, I'm hoping that we can direct those funds, maybe not these specific ones, but I know that that's one of our number 1 things is trying to be more equitable. So I think you get my point.
Yeah, and the other thing just to kind of reiterate is because we know that these customers are, again, they're the early adopters on many of our programs and measures. They're the ones who are paying attention most to kind of these, how to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. This is why when we first brought the changes to NEM to the board back, I don't remember when that was, last year sometime, we also said that we're going to come forward with a proposal for how to provide incentives via batteries to help provide more benefits to these customers so that they get more value out of their solar system through the use of a battery, right? Because you don't want to be producing all your electricity during the middle of the day when there's not valuable, but we help them shift it to the later hours of the day or the evening, and that's when prices are highest, they're gonna get more money as well. So I think that's where we want to focus our effort. That feels like a better kind of solution, is try to get more value out of these systems. And because we know that they'll probably likely do it because they are early adopters.
Okay, Director Members.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, there are some very tuned in customers, but there's others who get a check and it's like, oh, that's great. And no, which would probably include me, you know, I get a check from
Ooh,
SVCE.
bonus.
And it's like, oh, but you know, don't really go down below the surface of why and what it's tied to.
Right.
And maybe Tina's neighbor does, but so I just wonder what the proportion is of customers who actually understand what that check is, where it comes from, and have enough information to react. You know, if I get a check and it's $75 or I get a check, it's $150.
Right.
I'm not really gonna challenge it, because I don't, you know, even I don't really follow where that's stemming from. So I don't wanna say does it matter, because it matters in many ways. But like if you talk about trying to incent a less deep duck curve, again, those customers are not thinking about the duck curve. It's rates that drive them to usage that will affect the duck curve. So what I'm saying is we spend a lot of time, and even on our discount rate of 4%, on things that aren't necessarily driving the consumer. So I can support coming out equal with PG&E, but I understand the psychological. I just wonder how many people are affected by 1.25%, you know, a little smidgen over PG&E versus equal. Does anybody even know or understand or care that what proportion cares or understands?
You just have to have a big, you know, logo, SVCE, cut you this check, you know, that.
Well, I did see
helps.
that part. I saw that part, you know.
I'll let you-
So to that point, we definitely take these checks as a branding and marketing
Yeah.
opportunity.
Great.
And so each year, we're working closely with Pam Leonard and her team to take this population that we know is highly engaged and market programs, rebates, and offers within the letter that comes in that check. So we don't let that opportunity slide by us. And then an aside, because you got your check and didn't really know where it's from, my mother-in-law also got her annual check. And it was for something around $200, and she didn't read the letter. I wish she had read the letter. So instead, she calls me because she sees the logo. And she's like, this is where you work.
Is it? Sweetie, bye.
Is this the letter? This is for you because you did well with your solar. She's like,
Yeah.
so I can cash it.
Yeah, absolutely, that's real money.
I was one step above that, but, you know, I knew I could cash it.
You just didn't know what it was.
No, I mean, I kind of knew, I was downplaying it, but
Sure.
you know, you get a check in
Point
the
taken.
mail, you're gonna cash it, but you're not necessarily gonna dissect whether it's incenting, shifting your use of energy or, you know, or decreasing. I mean, that's one thing we do lose sight of, is decreasing our energy consumption. I think you said that earlier. We're shifting it and trying to be more efficient in it, but we're not, you know, talking about decreasing it overall, which we need to do as well. Sorry, I'm gonna get off my soapbox and go back to being quiet.
Those are good point. I'll say I think, well, we're not doing comments yet, but I guess my question was what you were talking to, you know, how this can help us with resiliency, and is that where I think we probably want to be headed? Everybody's starting to think that way, even individuals, not just cities, not just large organizations, but as we see everything and how things are changing and how we're being impacted by climate change. And so perhaps this is an opportunity to do a good piece of education to these great customers who've really been, you know, leading the charge. But I think I could support as well the recommendation. But I just wanted to hear, and it sounds like, yes, that you said this is a branding opportunity. And I think branding mixed with, you know, we want to focus on resilience could probably be part of that package.
Definitely. Yeah, I think if we're coming down to deciding the value between 1x PG&E to 1.25x. It's a matter of $25 to $50 for most of these folks. Whereas the offer contained inside that communication might be substantially more valuable to them if they're adding a battery, adding a heat pump, home charging, et cetera. The other side of that is that, regardless of what the final number is that we change it to, this will require a period of noticing in which we're going to have to bring these customers in closer. And as part of this process, that's why we've delayed implementation to January, so that we can essentially be in their inbox 3, 4, 5 times leading up to this change happening. Each of those presenting an opportunity to push more of our message out.
Okay, that's great. So are there any other questions? Okay, should we take public comment?
Yes. No hands raised for this item.
Okay, very good. So then, if there's any other further conversation we want to have, comments, or if anybody's ready to make a motion, I am. Anyone? Okay, well, I'll go ahead and move to support staff's recommendation. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, Director Meadows. So all those in favor, right? Okay, aye.
Aye.
There you go. Looks like that passed. Thank you, both of you. And then we will move on to number 6, which is our EV rebates.
Hello. I'll introduce the program snapshot and then pass it off to Hannah. So I'm the for-hire manager of decarbonization programs. Wanted to introduce our snapshot for today. This is one of our first programs that's focused on EVs themselves. All of our past programs have been focused on really deploying EV infrastructure. And so this is kind of a new program that has recently launched. And just a reminder, the program snapshots are our opportunity to share with you all what we're doing with either new or current programs and intended to be largely informational. And take it away.
Great, thank you, Nipora. Good morning, everyone. I'm happy to be here to share a bit about one of our newest programs, EV rebates for income qualified customers. Next slide. Just to set a bit of context for our motivation behind this program, I'm going to share some data with you. So starting with really the good news that Santa Clara County is a leader in zero emission vehicle adoption. I think we're all familiar with this, but in 2023, we can see almost 11% of our light duty vehicle population was a zero emission vehicle. We anticipate this to continue to grow. Last year alone, 43% of new car sales are zero emission vehicles. Wow. So really impressive trends, 43%, yeah. Next slide. However, while EV popularity and adoption continues to grow in our service territory, we also know that adoption is not evenly distributed for a number of reasons, but access to home charging is a really big catalyst for EV adoption. So we see higher rates of EVs among our single family residents. And we also know that the majority of EVs are registered in our wealthier and least vulnerable communities in our service territory. Next slide. And this trend really isn't that surprising if you consider some of the most commonly identified barriers to EV adoption, the first being a lack of home charging, which is why we have a number of programs aimed at increasing access for our multifamily residents to charging. But number 2 commonly cited is upfront vehicle cost. We know that EV costs are coming down, but they're still not quite at parity with internal combustion engine vehicles. And number 3 is really there's just a lot of confusion around EVs generally still, and especially around available incentives. It's a messy maze out there. So our program objectives here was really to increase more equitable EV adoption among our lower income and multifamily residents and really help to deliver more targeted education that addresses the needs of these residents. Next slide. So in October of last year, we launched our new EV rebate, which is $2,000 for income qualified customers, which we define as 80% or below area median income. We provide this rebate both for new and used vehicles. And it's fully, it can be purchased or leased, and it's fully stackable with other federal and other regional incentives. And we aligned our income levels with other programs to really help folks maximize the savings intentionally, to be able to stack with other things. We also integrated one-on-one EV support through our Go Electric Advisor service, so people can call up or email or chat any questions they have about EVs and about available incentives. And it's available as both an instant rebate off the sale price of the vehicle at a local participating dealership or as a post-purchase rebate. With our current funding, we have a goal of helping around 600 customers purchase an EV through this program. And so far, as of last Friday, we've helped 17 folks.
I was just gonna ask you, has there been any talk about making that available for down payment?
Well, it is, if you're going to a participating dealership, it's taken right off the hood of the car sales price. So it's basically reducing that total sale cost, and so thereby reducing the potential down payment. Yeah. Next slide. And so to support this program, we've partnered with Actera, which is a local community-based organization to help sponsor community education events about EVs in general, but also available incentives. So you can see we've had 3 successful events so far. We had an EV Expo that we hosted at La Ofrenda in Gilroy in November. The following weekend, we had a Lunch and Learn event at Gilroy High School that was all about financial incentives that are available. Just last Thursday, we had an online virtual workshop that 64 folks turned out for online, which we were really pleasantly surprised by. A lot of questions, a lot of enthusiasm. So we were really pleased about that. And both of these were offered in both English and Spanish. And coming soon, we have another EV Expo, most likely in Milpitas, early March. We're still nailing down all the details, but we're excited to continue these events because we've seen a lot of great feedback. Next slide. So what's next? We're going to keep promoting this rebate through our targeted outreach and education, particularly in lower adoption communities. We're going to continue to grow our local dealership network and continue to build relationships with our local EV dealers. And as we do with all of our programs, track our participation metrics and feedback from community members. And here are just a few photos from our Lunch and Learn event in Gilroy at Gilroy High School's really beautiful cafeteria. It was like really nice. It's like very nice.
How many people came to that?
Oh, so that event, we had 22 folks come out on a Saturday. November 9th, yeah. And we had like a taco truck there, free lunch, so it was a lot of fun.
How about La Ofrenda?
Well, thankfully, I mean, we kind of learned that pairing our events with an existing event, there's a lot of natural foot traffic. People are coming down for La Ofrenda. So I don't know the exact number.
Actual attention to.
But I think we, at least like over 100, people have come by and in terms of the natural foot traffic of that event.
Great.
Yeah, so that's all I have, but happy to take any questions.
Director Meadows and Director.
Thank you. And it seems to me I need to stand on occasion, as you probably noticed through meetings this year. So my question is, if someone's interested in getting an EV and they're qualified and they're gonna do it, is there a program that they can attach to make sure they've got EV charging near them?
That's
So
a great
what's the connection?
question. Yeah, so we do co-market both our multifamily EV charging incentive program. We also target residents at properties that we've installed charging at. As part of our marketing plan this year to boost engagement that way. But we don't have necessarily like a tied in charger program, but there have been programs like that in the past that PG&E offered actually up until the end of last year for income qualified customers. So We do provide a quick start guide that has a bunch of information for anyone who participates, that has info on how to charge, apps that you can use to help find charging near you. So if somebody doesn't have home charging, they can still access those types of resources.
Anyone else? Oh, Director Wiley, sorry.
Thank you. So, Hannah, good to hear all the progress we are continuing to make in Santa Clara County. Not to be a downer, but something we were talking of earlier, essentially the new administration, that's the reality. So two things come to my mind. Toward the end of the year, we're going to see two things, at least, that'll directly impact this one. One is, how are we preparing for the newer tariffs that are going to come in, and the price of the EVs are not going to stay here, they're gonna go up, unfortunately. It seems, I'll just say, that's what I'm interpreting based on what I'm reading in the media. The second part is, again, connecting to the executive orders coming, there has been a very direct, or federal government at least, a pullback from DEI related. Right now, it is restricted to something very specific. How is that going to trickle down to us? Are these two things that we are keeping in mind? I just wanted to highlight, you're all aware of.
I can start, and then, yeah, so certainly the changes in the federal administration are something we're keeping a close eye on, particularly the threat to the federal tax credits that are a huge boost, to be able to stack $7,500 is a huge thing, or $4,000 for a used EV. So these changes we're keeping an eye on it. There are some things that kind of in a wait and see pattern, but I think what we're also helping to communicate to customers is, if this is something you're considering, sooner the better. You can take advantage of our incentive, the federal tax credits, and we do see a lot of questions about that from customers at these events.
We're not the only ones watching, obviously, with this, so there's also been a lot of talk about what is the state thinking about doing on these fronts, and so we'll see with our slice of this, we tried to add this on as part of a bigger value stack. It'd be difficult for us to take on the entire value stack potentially. So we're kind of hoping that, we'll see what happens at the federal level, we'll see what happens at the state level, and then we'll continue to see, what do we iterate and adjust to kind of fill in the gaps that may be newly created by some of these changes.
Thank you, Justin. Unfortunately, the state's budget is also not in a position where they're slashing programs. They're essentially slashing climate-related programs. They believe in it. The state government clearly seems to indicate they believe in this. They don't have the money to support. So my unfortunate take is, we are not going to get more money from them not on all of the things that we will need to rely on them. Then, of course, the political winds changing at the state level will also impact. So that's why I said very clearly, I'm sorry, not to sound like a downer, but these are real concerns which will impact our programs, our reach to our customers, especially the affordable angle that we have kept in mind and done great work in the last few years, and also impact our budget down the road at some point.
I think that's why the importance of SVCE and the CCAs in general is more and more, right? Because we can, or the board can adopt policies and can adopt programs directed how they want them directed, right? So while there might be some move to try to step away from DEI or from looking at particular segments of our customers at a national level, we're not seeing anything at a state level, by the way, but at a national level, we as a community, you as a board direct us on how you want our dollar spent for whatever reason. So programs that we offer to a certain segment of our customers because we think it's harder to reach them and they perhaps need more incentives because we want everybody to be able to benefit from electrification and decarbonization, that is on the board to decide. And so the part of it is just the programs that we bring, and then we've got this community clean energy fund, where we'll talk about that as well, making sure that we can sustain those programs, not just for next year and the year after that, but longer term. So that's where the power of local control is really, really important, quite frankly.
Thank you, Monica.
We're being tested, right?
Exactly, and that's why I ended with, it's going to be the budget, because that's what we'll have to look at. The policy we can do, but if we don't have that extra money, how far will we need to go? I just wanted to highlight that.
Yeah, a lot of it is, some of it's just on education and having EV chargers be available and all of that, more so than just the dollars, right? And that's why we focus so much of our effort on education.
But the availability comes with a price. It goes back to that again. Case in point, my city is not going to be able to fund those 5 chargers that we were relying on from that grant. So it still comes down
We
to.
have our
the
new
simple-
grant program coming too, so.
But we had planned something else for that. Again, something gets cut. That's all I was saying.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, Director Plum.
Yes, and I will say one thing, there's the $10 billion bond sitting out there that the state, the state has budgetary issues. That being said, the residents of the state, the voters of the state just gave them $10 billion of environmental, focus to spend. And so hopefully some of these programs don't go away just because of the fluctuation from the state, but from a budget year by budget year standpoint, kind of continuing on the DEI standpoint, reaching non-English speakers becomes a critical thing, and love that you're doing like online efforts. One of the things that we've done from a city standpoint now is simultaneous English to up to 50 different language translations going on, and something to think about for, especially for the online programs that you're looking at. Whether or not we move that to all of our meetings becomes a secondary thing, but I do think that from an outreach standpoint, that is an area where we don't have to have one Spanish speaking meeting and then others. So when you talked about multiple languages, they're only single language outreach that we're looking at right now?
So our events so far have been both English and Spanish, and they've been simultaneous. So in the Lunch and Learn, it was actually kind of cool. There were like these headsets that people could put on, and it was being live translated by one of the staff members from Actera. And then online, Zoom has a function where you can have a live interpreter that you can listen to. But again, it's 2 languages, so it wasn't 50, but
and we live in such a, diverse community that, that making sure that we're reaching out to some of the less heard, less connected portions of our community, I think would be a goal for, in my mind, for 2025. Not that, definitely it's giving away the money and programs that we can, but especially for some of the communities that we don't hear from. And that's always a big question. So language is usually that biggest barrier. I think a lot of our cities try to do Spanish, but beyond that, there's such a variety that it makes it very difficult. So we can talk more after about what my city does. Thank you.
No, that's a great point, and we, and they offer multiple too on Zoom. That's so great. To be able, they can just choose whatever language they want to listen to. So that's an easy one. Yes, Director. Goes on.
Yeah, so I was curious, I think this goes hand in hand, I believe it's already been mentioned. Multi-unit family housing, like we have this goal, we need chargers there. Obviously, it makes sense for a million reasons. But I just kind of wanted to take a temperature check, maybe it's a Justin question, but like, how are we doing with the outreach, like where we're at for developers especially, or already pre-existing multi-unit housing, like where are we at? Is the message reaching? Is there conflict? Or I'm just kind of curious about that, because I feel that this goes hand in hand, that until we get those charger units at these places, that's when things will really take off, that's the real barrier I've experienced is most people are, well, I'm not getting an EV. Oh, I have to drive, half across town to find a charger. It's like, but if it was right there in their parking lot, that would make all the difference in the universe.
Yeah, there's definitely a little chicken and egg is there, and then also, I know you're asking both about new construction and
Yes,
existing.
yes.
But actually Hannah can speak to all of them.
Great.
Yeah, and it's a great question because we have on the existing building side, that's really where some of the biggest challenges are. And it is a chicken and egg situation where people are like, well, I don't have any EVs. No, none of my
Right.
tenants have them yet,
Yep.
so I have no need for this. Or do I invest all this money in infrastructure and it's just gonna sit there and I have
I
to
can
deal with
see
it?
that,
So
yeah.
there is a bit of a education barrier, but I will also say a lot of property managers here recognize that this is coming and it is important.
Absolutely.
And so we've seen a growth in our both interest and also participation in our technical assistance program, which we offer. It's a free program for multifamily property owners who are like, I don't know where to start here,
Yeah.
help me with this process. Or there's folks who have already identified a installer and they just want to access our incentives. So we've seen a growth there in our participation. I think we finished in our program alone, 16 properties have installed charging. We have a pipeline of 21 more reservations currently, and we're constantly growing. It is a tricky market to market to. Finding the right person, the decision maker at a property is a little bit tricky, but it's something that we're constantly iterating on in terms of how we can get the message out.
Okay,
Did we have, yes, Director
just
Willey.
very quickly, I know you have been working on the new multifamily coming, because we have talked about that. I know you're working on it, just wanted to add that.
Yeah, right. I forgot about that. And new construction, we're fortunate to have really strong reach codes that encourage,
Absolutely.
adding the charging when the building is built, which is the most cost-effective way to do it. And so thankfully we have that. And for affordable housing, new construction, we also offer incentives to help make those projects happen.
Okay, not seeing any other comments. Did we want to take other comments, please?
No hands raised for this item.
All right, well, given this informational item, I think we're done with this. Thank you so much, Hannah. That was great information. And does anybody have any announcements or anything they want to share?
Yes,
Okay, Director Tyson.
you may recall that I missed the last board. You probably forgot, but. But I do want to express my great appreciation to Tina Wong for standing in during a complicated meeting. And best efforts into it, so a little aloha. Thank you.
Oh, that was well deserved.
If you don't take it, Tina, I will.
As long as it's not food.
I know Tina. Okay.
Yes.
My wife said, oh, okay, so we got stuff. And then she said, let me wrap it up and make it pretty. And I said, she is talented.
I'd keep the box. That is gorgeous. You didn't have to. Yes, it was a complicated meeting, but then SVCE is a very, very special board and a phenomenal staff. So just like we talk of our SVCE customers across the 13 territories, we have to sometimes take a little longer, communication or something, just go a little slower, and the results are always good and well meant. We all care for this organization, we all work hard, and we all support the efforts and the goals. That's essentially what it comes down to. The rest of us, Larry hears this from me more than the others because there are other groups. Santa Clara County is one large family. And so whatever works out in one part will impact another city. So we all need to work together, and we do a phenomenal job. For that, I'll thank each one of you.
Well, on that note, yes, and I think we'll have to do more of that as is apparent with what's happening now for our mission. So in all facets. So on that good note, working together, means adjourned.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you all. Okay, I'm gonna run to.